The sea gives up secrets slowly, sometimes with a clatter of bronze, sometimes with a whisper of sand. In the summer of 1900, off the jagged coast of a small Greek island called Antikythera, a group of sponge divers hauled more than sponges from the deep: marble statues, jars, coins, and a crusted green lump of metal that would take a century to understand. For decades, the object lay like an enigma in a museum drawer, a farrago of corroded bronze and mystery, until a young archaeologist stared closely and noticed teeth, gears, and etched Greek letters hidden beneath centuries of salt. That moment changed everything. Embedded in that lump was a machine, a calculating instrument miniaturized and complex enough to look like something out of a future age. The Antikythera mechanism, as it would come to be called, is not merely old, it is a shock. A tiny, precise, gear-driven cosmos made by human hands 2,000 years ago, a machine that tracked the motions of sun and moon, predicted eclipses, and encoded cycles of time in ways historians had thought impossible for antiquity. Imagine a Roman cargo ship, overloaded with art and luxury, descending into the dark sometime in the late Hellenistic period. Its hull cracked, its marble passengers toppled into the rubble of the deep, and somewhere among the amphorae and statues sat a small box of brass gears. For more than a century, the wreck yielded surprises only slowly. Early divers pulled up magnificent statues that stunned the world, but the mechanism itself remained misunderstood. The bronze corroded into a fragile crust, the wooden frame lost to rot. The surviving object split into dozens of fragments. Today, conservators count around 82 pieces of the mechanism, each a puzzle. For much of the 20th century, the device was an oddity in a museum case. It wasn't until late in the century, with better imaging and renewed curiosity, that researchers began to realize they were holding a complete system. Dozens of interlocking gears, painstakingly cut teeth no wider than a millimeter, inscriptions written in ancient Greek that describe what the gears do, and indicators that once pointed to dates, stars, and celestial events. Every fragment is a clue, every gear tooth a testimony to lost workshops, forgotten instrument makers, and a tradition of mechanical thought that for centuries lay hidden beneath the sea. Put your finger on a date, wind a small handle, and watch a miniature cosmos rotate. The Antikythera mechanism was essentially a hand-cranked analog computer. It combined calendars, astronomical cycles, and predictive functions. The front face likely showed the solar year and the zodiac, a dial for the sun's position along the ecliptic, while the moon's pointer and a secondary dial tracked lunar phases and the irregular dance of the moon's speed. On the back, concentric scales and smaller dials encoded longer cycles: the Metonic cycle, used to synchronize solar and lunar years, the Saros cycle for predicting eclipses, and calendars for athletic festivals such as the Olympic Games. In short, it brought together timekeeping, astronomy, and ritual practice in one elegant device. The craftsmanship is breathtaking. Gear trains composed of as many as 37 gears, 30 of which survive, worked together to convert the steady rotation of a hand into the complex, non-uniform motions of celestial bodies. For the Greeks who would have used such a machine, philosophers, astronomers, possibly wealthy patrons, it reduced the sky to a mechanism you could hold, read, and demonstrate.
For most of its life, the mechanism had been a locked box of corrosion. Then, in the early 2000s, technology arrived like a pale rescue team. Microfocus X-ray computed tomography and high-resolution surface imaging allowed researchers to peer beneath the patina without touching the object. Those scans revealed teeth hidden under verdigris, inscriptions etched into surfaces that human eyes could not see, and the architecture of gear trains that suggested functions no one had suspected. Digital modelers and mechanical historians worked together, supported by painstaking philology, to reconstruct how each wheel engaged the next. They tested reconstructions physically and in software, trying gear counts, tooth shapes, and arrangements until the device's behavior matched both the inscriptions and astronomical reality. Over decades, the machine has been resurrected in labs and workshops. 3D prints, working bronze replicas, and interactive digital visualizations have made it possible to crank the mechanism and watch it predict eclipses decades in advance. These techniques didn't just read the machine, they resurrected a lost mechanical language, showing that Hellenistic engineers had mastered precision gearing centuries before medieval clockmakers. Even now, the Antikythera mechanism refuses to be simple. Recent research has sharpened some answers while opening new questions. Studies in the 2020s re-examined its lunar gearing and suggested the device followed Greek lunar reckoning rather than the Egyptian solar conventions earlier scholars had favored. Teams even applied modern signal analysis techniques to suggest how particular gears tracked the lunar year. Yet other research raises potentially embarrassing possibilities. Some scholars argue the triangular tooth profiles preserved on surviving gears would have been mechanically suboptimal, suggesting parts may have worn quickly or that reconstructions remain incomplete. Fresh surveys of the wreck, particularly work that began in the 2020s, have found new fragments and artifacts hinting that the ship's cargo was richer and more varied than thought, and that the site might even comprise more than one wreck. Then there's the question of provenance and cultural transmission. Where did this complexity come from? Was it the product of a single genius? A school of instrument makers in Rhodes or Syracuse? Or a lost tradition of workshop craft? We have hints, inscriptions that name astronomical cycles, references to months and games, but no signed workshop ledger, no factory blueprint. The mechanism remains simultaneously the clearest proof that antiquity could engineer at an advanced, miniaturized level, and the deepest riddle about how such knowledge was produced and why it disappeared for a millennium. If you stand in front of the machine, or a reconstruction of it, you see more than bronze and gears. You see a bridge across a void, evidence that technological sophistication surged and then, in certain forms, receded. The device reshapes narratives about the ancient world. It tells us that the Greeks did not just theorize the heavens in abstract geometry, they built instruments to embody that theory in moving parts. That realization forces us to reconsider how scientific knowledge travels, what counts as technological progress, and how fragile cultural memory can be. In an era when we take for granted tiny precision gears inside watches, phones, and machines, the Antikythera mechanism reminds us that the human capacity to translate cosmic patterns into mechanisms is ancient, and that genius can be lost to time, war, and the sinkings of ships. It humbles modern assumptions and enriches our sense of continuity with the past.
Close your eyes and imagine the hands that made it. A craftsman drilling teeth thinner than a fingernail. An intellectual sketching cycles from nightly observations. A patron or scholar testing the dial at dawn. Imagine the device packed into a crate for a long voyage. A storm rolling the deck. The ship slipping beneath foam and dark. A little cosmos sinking with the rest of human cargo. For a century and more, it slipped beneath waves and sand until human curiosity and modern science woke it. The Antikythera mechanism is, in the end, both a machine and a metaphor, a reminder that knowledge can be exquisitely precise and precariously fragile, that progress is not linear, and that sometimes one small object can change our story about an entire civilization. So the next time you look up at the moon or wind a clock, remember that 2,000 years ago, someone built a tiny model of that sky and thought, with hands and tools, about how the heavens move. That thought, and the bronze that carried it, is still turning.